Since the moment boys are born, their lives are predetermined in a certain way with societal values or biases due to their particular gender, and many men around the world are going through a serious mental health crisis. Statistics of suicide rates across the world, 70 to 80% of them make up of men, and that's an extremely large number and extremely concerning. In intimate partner relationships where individuals are confiding in a person who they truly love, their wives, their girlfriends, or any form of relationship which is romantic per se, and when abuse exists in such relationships, often men, when they are victims of it, their problems are not taken seriously. And sadly, society doesn't talk about it much either. I was able to get in touch with an individual who was brave enough and was willing to share his story with the abuse unfortunately he faced in a relationship.
I believe I was in a very happy relationship initially, and we were both making each other's lives better. To build a future with her, I really worked all day, all night to build us a home, to start a family. But unfortunately, with time, she started to become extremely toxic and abusive, physically abusive towards me, and there was nothing that I could do at all. Because sadly, in our society, there is no justice for men, and who would even believe that a man was being assaulted and abused by a woman now?
Deepika Bhardwaj became quite popular as a men's rights activist, especially from one of her speeches in a TEDx event.
That justice is the right of every individual regardless of their gender. I'm going to be talking about men today. I'm going to be talking about men who are victimized. I'm going to be talking about men who are being abused, systematically abused by laws that have been made for protection of women, but are in turn coming out to be as a tool of injustice to men and women. And I'm going to be talking about men who absolutely are nowhere in the conversations when we talk about gender.
Deepika spoke extensively of unfair laws in India and shed more light on the struggles of men.
Are men vulnerable? Yes, men are vulnerable. And that's what I figured out in the last 2.5, 3 years when I have been researching and working on this subject and my documentary film. You can be accused of a domestic violence if you shout at your wife, but if your wife shouts at you, there's nothing you can pretty much do. You can be accused of domestic violence if your family circumstances are such that she needs to work. But if she doesn't want to work and if you force her to work, it's coded in the law that she can accuse you of domestic violence. I've seen people being implicated in sexual harassment at workplace because the woman did not get a good appraisal and she filed a case against the person. Or if a person asks the woman for a drink, he has been accused of sexual harassment at workplace.
There were many subjects that Deepika spoke upon, but let's look at what a mental health practitioner has to say.
There's this idea of therapeutic alliance where you're trying to build rapport with your client, and that could be misconstrued in trying to essentially get validation, like just simply get validation from the client. So whatever that they say, you just go through with it because what you're trying to do is just build that rapport, build that trust. And this can go significantly well into the client's favor because like it's essentially how they're manipulating or trying to manipulate the therapist into thinking like, yeah, I'm seeing it in the right way, in the way that I want them to see. But essentially what a therapist has to do after building that rapport is one essential key point is confrontation, where when you've already built that rapport with the client, when that trust is already built, you have to break down, or in a sense we use the word deconstruct. So basically saying that we're deconstructing where does this narcissism or negative emotion lies. So that is essentially what is essentially being misled. When we're looking into like male victims in general, like male victims of abuse have been severely stereotyped to be taught like, oh, when you're like abused or for example like sexually assaulted, they're usually discriminated to the point where everything that they have done, whether they're sexually assault, when it comes to, like, for example, sexual assault, it can be seen as an achievement. It's like, it's usually they get comments whether they're like, it's a privilege for them to get assaulted, or they even get like praises saying that, oh, it's such a big achievement for them, when in actuality it's such a traumatizing thing, and it seems that it's so hard for society to comprehend. Like the famous cases of Johnny Depp or Jonathan Majors, it's significantly harder to eventually prove that the woman was the assaulter and the man was the assaultee or the assaulted. And for Johnny Depp, it like took a turn for him for the worse, right? Because like he was escaping brand deals, no one wanted to work with him, but eventually after the truth came out, that's when he got his retribution.
There are many men, sadly, who go through various struggles, whether it be mental, physical abuse, or even sexual abuse. Much like the story of another brave individual who wanted to share what he'd gone through, which was an unfortunate end to a relationship he thought would last forever.
So we like dated for a year and a half. At the very end, to get to know that whatever she told me and how she came to me and spoke about the trauma, that is just one of her texts. So basically, she is doing this from past 8 to 10 years. So there are many victims like me. And basically, when we backtracked and we checked it out with her previous friends and colleagues, we got to know that she is doing this from a very long period of time. So basically, in the name of feminism and the name of what my body wants and a woman's right, she goes around with men and who are defenseless and who actually are not very attractive and who are very like introverted in their own life. So she goes to men like them and she like basically like she tries to get into their head, she manipulates them and she uses them for attention, for sex, for physical intimacy, for their money and for the time and everything. And once she's done with them, she goes to set off another guys. So when I got to know this, I was being very devastated. Yet after getting to know this also, I was ready to give another chance. Probably like a lot of people do mistakes, but she never found it to be respectable and she always thought that what she is doing is right. And at the very end, she started to play the victim card, even though I was ready to accept her back. And she was trying to get more toxic, more abusive. And even in the relationship, she used to like physically harm me and mentally to scar me. But because of her backstory, which she created in my mind, I had never raised my voice against her, or I never treated her bad because I actually wanted to give her a good life. The experience which I have gone through, so that actually probably made me also mentally disturbed. Like I gave my everything, I gave all of my efforts. I was genuine, I was kind, I never tried to harm. But at the very end, she decided to do this with me. And at the very end, when I was even ready to forgive her, she had no regret. And she was smiling while I was crying and I was crippled. I was in tears and I could not even look at the world as it is. It's a very beautiful place, but I was not able to like understand what is happening to me. And she kept on smiling at me, seeing me cry. And I do not know. These kind of experiences make me believe that people with mental health issues take this rights in a very different manner and they use it against them.
The statement that men are completely invulnerable, especially to abuse in relationships, is extremely false. There are men who tend to suffer on a daily basis, but sadly there are no laws protecting such individuals because they tend to be biased towards one particular gender. So it is about time that we not only hear the voices of these individuals, but it is about time that reforms are made so that justice prevails.